Griffin. I don't see Jennifer. Moving on, we will go to David Yan's group, followed by Connie Cunningham, followed by Veronica Lentfer. David, I see you have 4 people in your group, so you
Yes, and
will
I
have
do have a PowerPoint presentation as well.
6 minutes and 24 seconds. And okay.
Good evening, City Council members. There has been a lot of emotion and strong feelings about this project. Tonight, I only want to talk about the facts, so let's take a closer look. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, substantial evidence that the project will pose a health and safety hazard. That's all you have to find tonight. I have 6 grounds that I can go through. I certainly have a lot more, but any one of these should qualify for you to find that evidence of the health and safety hazard. Next slide, please. Let's go one by one. Firstly, let's talk about AB 130's exemption. You'll notice that a lot of cities, if you go through their AB 130 checklist, if you're in a very high fire hazard zone, it actually doesn't even qualify for the CEQA exemption right on the spot. That's the first question. It's a first level disqualifier. Why do some cities allow it and some not? Well, at the corridor level, the city actually has to apply mitigating standards to accommodate for those, for the fact that they're in a very high fire hazard zone to even qualify for some of these criteria that we're going to talk more about. The city has only adopted baseline standards, so the legislature would have no effect if that's all it required was existing baseline standards. We can move on. Next slide. We've talked a lot about these 3 criteria. The key point here is and. It's building materials under 7A, it's setback under 4290, and it's defensible space under 4291, sometimes also referred to as 51182 under the LRA. 4291 has not been signed off. If you look at the consultant memos from the city, the consultant memos from the developer, as well as Chief Estrada's updated letter and is signed off, they only signed off on 4290. So they did not address defensible space. These are actually present tense requirements under AB 130. The key word in the statute is adopted with an ED. That means it's been adopted before the CEQA exemption is granted. Let's talk a little bit more about the alternate means, AMMR, under the 4290 setback. We've heard a lot about building materials being used as the alternate, but let's look on the left column. Building materials is its own independent qualification standard. That has to be met anyways. That's one of the 3 criteria. So when you're using an alternate means, of which almost all the criteria for the alternate means differs back to the building materials, and you haven't looked at defensible space, then we've essentially diluted 3 minimum criteria under the CEQA exemption into 1, building materials. So that on its face should not qualify. And again, these are present tense findings. The standard is adopted, not to be adopted. Okay, next slide, please. Let's talk a lot about evacuation. You've heard the numbers. Fur and Pierce shows over 200% operating capacity on McClellan Road and Bub Road. Those are the only 2 exits if you live on Linda Vista Drive or in that corridor. If you go a little bit past it, it gets up to 420%. So I think that's significant. A lot's been said about that. I can go to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit more about the rationale for why the developer is not considering evacuation. If you look at the February 12th, 2026 memo from Cox and Castle, it says that because they received a clearance from the HAA in April of 2025, that is the reason why they did not consider evacuation for this study. But I found in our PRA, in our public records request, that in October of 2025, 6 months after that stated clearance, that they were still asking Ms. Sugiyama about about conducting an evacuation study. Why would you ask that if you already got clearance 6 months prior to that? Let's keep going. So we talked about the Fur and Peer study. That's only on the record as of March 9th for the health and safety element. We can debate about whether AB 130 requires it, but the Subdivision Map Act, which is a separate track, absolutely does. If you have evidence of a health and safety hazard, you must consider it under the Subdivision Map Act. And whether or not evacuation studies are required or not is a totally different story. You have evidence, you have the evidence you need. Let's keep going. Next slide. When residents finally raised evacuation concerns starting on January 13th of 2026, prior to a neighborhood meeting held by Summer Hill, one was finally done by Hexagon. We had to complain to get that released. When we looked at it, what we found was that the Hexagon study already shows the corridor is failing. So they're talking about 3% additional or 2 minutes additional. That misses the point because the Hexagon study studies the intersection of McClellan and Bub. That's where 7-Eleven is, okay? It does not measure the time to evacuate Linda Vista Drive. How can you have an evacuation study that doesn't measure the time to evacuate the street that you're on? And then, so that's 61 minutes is only the intersection. Then you have to add the time to exit Linda Vista Drive. So it's over 61 minutes. Next slide. We talked about no notifications. I think we heard from Luke himself, who said that nobody was notified. I'm disappointed to hear this evening that Councilmember Mohan is not recusing herself. She could still elect to make that decision on the spot, and I would recommend in light of everything that she does. In conclusion, thank you for your time.
Thank you, David, and your group. Next, we will welcome Connie Cunningham, followed by Veronica Lenfer's group, followed by Kenneth Javier Rosales. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you. Thank you. Oops. Okay. Honorable Mayor Moore, Vice Mayor, and council members. My name is Connie Cunningham. I'm a 38-year resident on the Housing Commission, speaking for myself only. I strongly support this application for 51 new well-designed homes in a wonderful location for students from elementary through high school. My children attended these excellent schools. I know that the new families will deeply appreciate being part of this neighborhood and schools. Cupertino needs more homes of all types. These townhomes include below market rate purchase homes is an excellent step forward. The county fire chiefs clearly explained how the homes meet the new requirements for new fire high severity maps. They are professionals who best advise council and residents on fire risks and preparation. I urge you to heed their advice. These homes are near Cupertino highly acclaimed school, middle school and elementary school. It's also near other city amenities. Of special interest is the applicant's request for access to the Linda Vista Trail. That would be an amazing access to trails, Blackberry Farm, and the Blackberry Preserve. Blackberry Preserve is a gem that Cupertino has set aside for nurturing nature's plants and animals, as well as nurturing the human spirit. I urge City Council to approve this Summerhill Townhome project tonight. Thank you for this time to speak.
Thank you, Connie. Next, we will welcome Veronica's group. Veronica, you have a group of 3 people, so you will have 4 minutes and 48 seconds this evening.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Veronica Lenfer, and I live near the proposed 51 townhome development. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and 7 other residents. So I'd like to make several points. First, when the city considered rezoning Evulich Court, notification was deficient in so many ways. For example, on September 6, 2024, I personally attended a meeting with our neighbors, City Manager Pamela Wu, and Mayor Sheila Mohan to deliver a petition signed by 745 residents with many concerns. But what happened after that? Nothing. It was never acknowledged and never placed in the city council records until frustrated neighbors got Kitty Moore involved. Is this how the city listens to the 745 persons most affected by this development? What happened to Transparent Cupertino? The city has dropped the ball so many times. They didn't even mail clear legal notices to residents within 300 feet of the project when the zoning was changed. Every petition signer expressed shock and concern about both this proposal and the rezoning, which we didn't know about. This parcel had been zoned R1 for single-family homes for over 60 years, which reflected the character of our neighborhood, until it was rezoned again in July 2024 without notifying the local residents. The next key point I want to make is that this development will significantly worsen an already unsafe evacuation situation. You don't get a redo on this site, all of you. Its development will be a part of our neighborhood forever. We've lived there decades. This will go on for decades. We have serious unresolved concerns about the fire safety that have not been adequately addressed. The density and design introduce new risks in a very high fire hazard zone. It's also important to note that the Planning Commission's approval last month was fundamentally flawed. Here's why. After voting for the Evulich project on February 24th, Planning Commission Chair Tracy Casalocharan stated that the recommendation was made without knowing about the evacuation route capacity assessment that was prepared by Furr and Piers in September of 2025. In fact, in her public letter to the city earlier this month, she wrote, quote, "Last week, a representative from the same environmental consulting firm that did the Evulich AB 130 exemption stated to over 100 planning commissioners that development in very high fire hazard zones should not be exempt from CEQA via AB 130, unquote. Therefore, this project must not be exempt from CEQA. Safety must be a non-negotiable priority for our city. Who will be held accountable if something goes wrong? We recommend that you reject the Evulich project and require a full, transparent CEQA review. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Veronica. Next.